A pair of very exciting middleweight contenders are set to meet up against each other, making their returns. One, Paulo Costa, is scheduled to take on Jared Cannonier on August 21st at a UFC Fight Night card as the headliner for an event that does not have a location or venue just yet. It's an interesting headlining bout. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be excited about this one. I know I am. I'm curious to hear, Drake, what are your thoughts about this matchup that got announced today?
Yeah, I didn't see this one coming, but I think it makes a good amount of sense. Both of these guys coming off of their only losses at middleweight. Paulo Costa, his only loss in his career against Israel Adesanya in his title fight effort back in September. Yeah, I'm fine with this one being a main event. I am excited for it. Got a lot of explosivity to it. Both of these guys are finishers. I can't see it not being good and in a main event spot, despite them both being losers in their last fights. Not to call them losers necessarily, but it's just coming off their last fights, looking to rebound. As I mentioned, these two losers here, number 2 and number 4 in the division, respectively. They both lost to the champion and the former champion. So this is great to see, how they rebound, how they react to those tough losses. Yeah, I'm very excited for it. I think it should be good. Feels like Costa's, his activity clearly has gone down drastically since the Yoel Romero fight, 2018, and so on around that time. But hopefully he can get back to being a bit more active, at least a fight a year. Obviously he's had his issues, had to pull out of the Robert Whittaker matchup, which was very excited for that one as well. But yeah, here we are now in August in an unknown location. Could be Fight Island back there again. That could be the middle of a warehouse. Who knows where it's going to go down? But I like it, man. I do.
Yeah, this is a fantastic matchup, man, because like you said, both of these guys are finishers. They're going to go in there and just try to end the fight as soon as they see that opportunity. I'm interested to see, where they do end up placing this event, right? Because the other fights that are announced on this card so far are actually pretty good. But is this going to be like the type of card that they try to, bring the fight night cards back to, crowds? Or is this going to be like an Apex show again? Or like you said, a Fight Island show? I know at Fight Island, they have like, the limited crowd sort of thing over there as well now. But this is going to be an interesting thing to see because this is the type of fight that I think you could obviously put on. And, in the past, pre-pandemic, this wouldn't even be a question, right? Like they'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. It's a headliner of a fight night card. It's got title implications as well, potentially. So it would make sense to be a headliner of a fight night card. I'm just going to be curious to see if they bring this back for, crowds, considering fight night cards aren't a thing yet in this pandemic era or tail end of the pandemic era, however you want to categorize it at this point. So that's the biggest question for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that is a very compelling point to look at. Because I think that obviously Dana wants to get back to as overall normal as he can. And with no dates being set yet, or no location for kind of these more down the road events, not even UFC 265 doesn't have a location yet either, I believe. And surely they'll try and get that one in front of a crowd because it is a pay-per-view. But for fight nights, when they decide to try and go down that path again and maybe rebook some of these that fell out last year, like some Portland shows. I know that we just got the Blazers with the crowd again, but not at full capacity, of course. So don't know if Dana will do that just yet. But, some of the cities and whatnot that lost out on having UFC events last year. Very excited for when they can get back to those and rebook them as they said they would. Hopefully they stick to that. As I just mentioned, Portland, where I can go to that one quite easily. But yeah, this would be a perfect fight to kind of roll that out. But at the same time, summertime, I think, is what I've kind of heard about them going back to Fight Island for, and the fact that, Brazilians can get to America now and stuff. It's easier for international travel as time has gone on. And Marina Rodriguez just did it on the shortest amount of time you could imagine, incredibly. Paulo Costa doesn't need to go fight on Fight Island. He did for his last fight, but that if they could do a crowd there, that would be fine. And I just think that this period of the schedule might be around when they do get back there, at least for a stretch, as they kind of did last year and at the beginning of this year. Or maybe it would be more towards the end. Either way, it's around that time where it's really you're uncertain about what could happen. I think obviously it would be one of the two options or the safe bets right now is the Apex or Fight Island, but when to try to go back to a venue for a crowd on a fight night. Great headliner for it is this one, but then you have to kind of look at all the options of states and what they're allowing and whatnot. So I don't know. It's tough to tell. I'd have to, if we were to go really in depth with it, I would go back and look at the schedule of what was lined up last year and see if those places are all good now. That might be a good starting point. If anybody would like to go do that before we do, check it out and tell us in the comments below. But yeah, I don't know, man. That's very tough to predict. But I think this would be a good start, and so would the fight that's going to happen the week before, which we'll get into at some point.
Yeah, no doubt. See, like I'm actually enjoying this kind of weirdness that we're going through right now, where the pay-per-views are the ones that have the venue and the crowds, and like the other fight nights are like, hey, you're in the Apex. Like you almost have to like earn a spot on a pay-per-view and earn a spot in front of a crowd. Like I kind of like that because it kind of separates the two like more. But at the end of the day, I think full crowds for everyone's going to be the best bet at some point once we get back to that. Now, in terms of this fight, let's talk a little bit about how we think it'll play out, because like you mentioned, both of these guys are coming off of losses, their first losses in the middleweight division. Between the two, I would think, or at least from my perspective, I think that we learned a lot more about Paulo Costa and his loss than we did about Jared Cannonier and his, because Costa, I think, got exposed. I think Izzy kind of showed a lot of people of how to approach this guy and how to really break him down and kind of freeze him, versus, the Cannonier fight with Robert Whittaker. You're like, yeah, he got beat and Robert Whittaker did his thing, but I don't think we really learned a lot about Cannonier's weaknesses that we didn't know beforehand, so to speak. Like, I think we've had enough tape out there on Jared Cannonier and what he's good at, what he's not, versus Paulo Costa, who's been basically just going out there and marching people down and kind of, taunting in their face and kind of doing all the little weird little antics to get them to throw and, leave themselves open for punches and stuff like that. I think that Jared Cannonier has more to go off of, considering recent game film. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And, you mentioned the point about Costa being pretty much exposed against Adesanya, which is pretty hard to deny just when you look at his career and then that performance. But at the same time, the devil's advocate for me is that was Adesanya, though. Like, he's a guy who he should be able to do that. I don't know if other people can, but he 100% should be able to, and he did go out and do it, flawlessly. And I believe at the same time, that's kind of been the narrative, is that, okay, we know exactly what to expect from Costa now. We should have expected this even before that fight. It's kind of been one of the grandest exposures, I guess you could say, in a long time. I don't want to go back to Rousey and Holm, but it's one that stands out a lot. Like, it feels like people just don't have much belief in Costa now because that's how much he was figured out. But it was against Adesanya. I think that he knows that as well, though. I mean, he should, because that's what everybody's talking about. But at the same time, despite him maybe realizing that, we'll see. If he does, I feel like it's only going to make him more aggressive. I don't think he's going to change to the point of becoming more of a tactician or anything crazy like that. It just doesn't seem... It's a big change, right? So I think that in a fight where he's got to really come back and prove that not to be the case, at least to a point where he isn't going to just lose because people have figured him out so much now. So I think that we could see him pretty wild, look for the finish pretty quickly in this one. I think he will land, do damage. I can envision him. I can see him getting the knockout more than I can Cannonier in this fight. Not that Cannonier can't, but just when you look at the styles and, Adesanya versus Costa, Cannonier versus Costa, I think it's going to be hard to replicate Adesanya's performance for practically everyone in the middleweight division. Maybe not Robert Whittaker, but that's just kind of what we got from that one with the styles clash. And not to say he won't get figured out and, maybe pieced up a little bit by some people going forward, but I think it's going to be a lot harder to replicate than people are giving him credit for, perhaps. So I think that we should see somewhat of a vintage Costa return in this one, whether he wins or loses. I think he will still go out and perform pretty well, even in win or defeat. So we will see how it goes.
And we will see how it goes. Let us know what you think in the comments below how this matchup's going to play out. Who do you have winning? Is this going to be one of those fights that can carry, the return to crowds? There's a lot of questions to be answered about this as it approaches. So let us know what you think below, and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Drake, final question for me. Who are you picking? Early prediction.
Oh, early prediction. Man, I as I said, I'm kind of believing in Costa a little bit here, even though it's up in the air. I think I'm excited to see Cannonier return at middleweight, coming off that loss. I really am always curious about fighters, how they rebound off of significant losses. For him, that was one where if he beats Whittaker, he's getting the title shot. So a learning experience for him indeed. But same goes for Costa. So I'm really looking forward to it, but I believe in Borchinia.
Very cool. We'll see how it plays out. I'm actually going to go with Jared Cannonier because that's my guy. So I'm rolling with him to get it done. Kind of keep with the exposure of one Paulo Costa, the eraser. The eraser's a little worn down right now, I think. So we'll see how it plays out on August 21st. Till then, stay tuned to the Body Lock. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications. So every time we post stuff like this stuff, you get it to your phone, your other little devices that you may have, all your technology things you people use, whatever the kids use these days. Yeah, you know what to do. Yeah.
No wine included.
Exactly. No hangovers.